Welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us. This week we're bound to inspire you. We speak with young entrepreneur Heshan De Silva, and he tells us his story of rising from the ashes to succeed in the business environment in Africa. You get to have your say on the issues as well, and we have Africa's top 10. You're watching the Africa Leadership Dialogues. I'm Julie Gichuru. Just 7 years ago, a young Heshan De Silva tried to take his own life. He had hit rock bottom. But today, he's a successful African entrepreneur making a difference in the lives of thousands of people. Heshan De Silva is the founder of VenCap Kenya, which invests in business ideas across 15 different sectors in East Africa, ranging from roads, robotics and hospitality to agriculture and much more. He started what's now the De Silva Group with $200. Choosing projects carefully, he grew the De Silva Group into one of the region's most enterprising entities with holdings in commodities, technology, renewable energy, insurance, and agribusiness. In 2008, Heshan was selected by the United States Congress as one of Kenya's brightest young leaders. Today, he lends his hands to the boards of a number of well-respected companies in Kenya, as well as several youth and enterprise funds. A devout Christian, he goes to church. And today he's preaching. He has a message for you. Let's take a look at the story of Heshan De Silva. Heshan, thank you so much for making time for the Africa Leadership Dialogues. Now, we happened to meet in the Twitterverse, on Twitter, where I noticed somebody posting really uplifting tweets. And I noticed you said, I've worked in a restaurant, I think you said, I've done all kinds of jobs. You can start at the bottom and make it, to the top, and really trying to inspire people. Then I heard your story, and I was even more inspired. Let's start at the beginning, Heshan. Tell us what happened to you 7 years ago, and where are you today?
Oh, thank you for having me. 7 years ago, I was in university in Florida. And I was heavily involved in drinking. That led to drugs, and that led to terrible grades in school, which led to an attempted suicide. It was a terrible chain of events that I found myself in that are not very unique to me. Miami could be someone else's Nairobi, and that's what I tried to stress. Young people need to prioritize their life over fun. And when
so this was about fun, the drugs and the alcohol?
Of course, yeah, and trying to fit in. You're much younger than people who are over there, or you have less money than them, so you try to overcompensate in other ways. And that's what I found myself doing. Let's
talk about how you got there, because you grew up in Kenya.
Yes.
And then you went to Miami for university. So what was the immediate reaction? You land from Nairobi, home environment, Africa, to Miami.
A massive culture shock. You come from Kenya, where a Prado is a nice car, and kids over there drive Aston Martins and Ferraris. That's a huge gap. And my parents gave me $200 for a semester to spend on XYZ, living expenses
Pocket
and whatnot.
Money.
And that's lunch or that's dinner for some of those guys. So you have to find ways to be relevant to people. You never want to be someone who's just a guy who's on the side that no one really cares about, especially when you care about things like that. Mm-hmm. And I did, and that resulted in me overcompensating.
You wanted to impress people.
Of course.
You wanted to have friends around you.
Yeah, and you don't want to be alone, and you've got all of this freedom to do what you want, and no one really checking on you. And it's quite normal for people in university as well, right? I mean, when you get there, you have the freedom to do as you want, dorm parties or raves or what have you. And I found myself in that world.
It's really, you say alcohol and drugs, but tell us how it actually started. For instance, the first drink and the first drug you tried, and how did that start?
Well, I was a really good kid when I first got there. I came from a very sheltered family, and and those values and all were very important. So I decided I wasn't going to drink at all. And you know, there's peer pressure and whatnot, and it led to someone saying, just have this one drink, you know, just give it a try, you know, and I'll never forget it. It was Bombay Sapphire gin, you know, something quite high end, not typical university drinks, right? And I said yes to that one, and I absolutely hated it, but I loved the feeling.
Right,
You know?
it tasted horrible.
But it dulled everything that you're going through, you know, like whatever your financial situation is, or maybe you're not doing so well in class, or whatever the case is, for that moment you're given a high. And I started,
it didn't matter.
Yeah, and I started chasing after that high. And when you get used to drinking quite a lot, drinking inevitably leads to needing something else to give you that high. Because, you know, I stopped eating so that I could stay drunk longer. I'd wake up spinning, and I figured, hey, let me just keep drinking instead, you know, and that was very negative. But as I found that it started taking more and more to keep that feeling going, it was yes to drugs. And marijuana is where everyone starts, but that's a typical gateway, especially in places like the States, where that led to cocaine and all kinds of stuff after that.
So my big question, Heshan, is you're struggling even just simply because you can't keep up with the lifestyle, because you don't have enough money and you're trying to kind of hang with the cool kids and... Yeah. But, so where does the money for the alcohol and drugs come from?
I was working in a coffee shop.
Okay.
You know, work study. You're allowed to work 20 hours a week in the States, and you're paid $6.50 an hour. So that's $180, $120 odd that you get extra per week. That's chump change still for people. So I had another friend, and we'd sit outside the library and we'd do papers for people who were on worse drugs than we were. You know, and some of these kids, you know, I mean, I would never say who they were, but they were extremely wealthy. They came from wealthy families. And you can see their pupils are heavily dilated and whatnot, and they just come and they mutter saying, get me a C on this. And research papers are very common in the States. It's not once a year or once a semester, it's almost every week. So you get a steady group of people, and when you start giving them the grades that they want, they're willing to pay for it. So that's what we were doing.
Wow, so you were writing papers for people,
yeah, not going
making
to class.
money off that,
Exactly.
And you could have been in class doing, but you know, it's a good news story, and that's what's amazing about this. But don't try this at home, is all I can say. It's a terrible journey.
Yeah.
So tell us, when did it come to the point where you were willing to take your own life? How did you get to that point?
I mean, when you're on drugs that are quite expensive, you find yourself in debt to those people. You know, I mean, they
to the drug dealers.
Exactly, and those are people you never want to be in debt with, right? And I was in debt with them, and my grades were terrible, and I just decided, you know what, the shame that I had brought to my family and the situation that I found myself in at that moment equated to not being worth the life I was given. So I'm better off to everyone if I'm dead, rather than continuing to live like this. And that's the problem with drugs and alcohol abuse, is that it alters your perception of reality. You know, you think that you're better off dead, when in reality, straight F's in school, your parents don't want you dead because of that, right?
There's nothing you could do possibly
Exactly.
to make them want you gone.
Yeah, exactly, but I believe that they did. You know, it was just a terrible, terrible, dark place, you know, and to say dark would be an understatement. It was very dysfunctional, and that was the norm. And as a 17-year-old kid trying to fit in, I found myself in that. So yeah, I decided to take my life.
What did you do?
50 Panadols, 50 Peritons was the number. I never forget those two numbers, because in my drunken state I'd Googled how much would it take to do this. And today I can laugh about it because it just seems so crazy that I was that person 7 years ago. But at that moment it was something very serious to me. And I took those pills, and through an act of God, literally, I didn't die.
So you ended up in hospital?
Yes, I did, and 3 days in a psych ward in Florida, and you meet some crazy people in there, you know, I mean, people who truly do not want to live. They will do anything to die, and those were the 3 darkest days of the whole time. Because there were people who had cut open their arms, people who tried to cut themselves with the Bible, just really, really really dark. So yeah, it was an interesting experience. That was the road to recovery, I guess you could say.
How did you get back home?
Dad flew across to the States, and I'll never forget that he gave me a hug, and he's not someone who normally shows a lot of emotion, but he was crying. And you know, you just get that really hard hammer on the head that tells you, you know what, you have really messed up. And that was it. You know, you see your own father crying and coming to get his son from a psych ward in the US. No parent imagines that university will lead that way. And so many of our young Kenyans who go to the States get into depression, they try suicide, many of them do succeed. And the reality is that life is not easy out there, right? You're trying to fit in, you're trying to be relevant to the people around you, and that's why I truly think you need to know who you are before you make that step to university. If you're not sure of who you are, you're not sure of where you want to go in life, university isn't the right time for you.
A lot of people, and we'll come back to your incredible story and your return home, but a lot of people line up outside embassies, you know, just to get the ticket to go away because there's the impression there's more opportunity, there's a better chance at life. What's your message to people who think the grass is greener on the other side?
You know, truly people in the West are looking out here for opportunities today, which is so crazy, right? I mean, we're all lining up trying to get that visa to go across, thinking that we'll get a job and we'll get some money and whatnot. But the truth is jobs are extremely hard to come by in the States, right? You're going across as an illegal immigrant because work permits are not easy to come by. And that's the life that you want to try and forge yourself. When we have 1930s USA over here in Kenya, which is just getting ready to hit its growth peak, and you get to be here, why would you ever leave this place?
Wow, yeah. That's powerful. So you came back home, your dad came, emotional, picked his son up, his precious son, yes, and said, we're going home, took you home. Now you're in Kenya, what next?
Get clean. And the thing is, when you're dependent on alcohol to such a state and some drugs, you become an awful person. You know, you're very, very dysfunctional. You're shouting at people, you're not rational. Panic attacks, you can't sleep, you're not eating correctly. You know, I had long hair, and it was a wreck. You know, I was.
You weren't wearing smart suits and looking all, yeah.
There were no smart suits.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I was a mess, and yeah, I had to get clean. That was the first thing. And I'm so blessed to have parents who saw that. You know, so many people would give up on people who are so far gone. Especially in the West, you find a lot of families are like, you know what, you take care of yourself.
We've done our part and we can't do it anymore.
And those are the decisions you made, the choices you made, you live with them. But mine stood by me. My mother sat by my bed for months while I was going through these panic attacks and all, and just, you know, tried to get me clean. And it happened. Today I'm 7 years and 4 months clean.
Congratulations. Oh, I know it wasn't an easy journey even to get clean.
No, it isn't at all.
What would you tell authorities in terms of the need for rehabilitation? Because it's a huge problem in Kenya.
It really is.
Even for those who want to get clean, you know, it's not affordable, it's barely accessible. What would you want to say to the authorities?
I think we stigmatize alcoholism and drug abuse, but the truth is that it is so prevalent, not only in Kenya, but across the world, right? And families are torn apart by fathers or mothers who are addicted to certain things. And it's not just drug abuse, but immoralities and cheating and things like that. We need to bring values back into our lives. You know, if you have a partner, be faithful to that person. If you have children, do good by them. Don't be that person who leaves to go out and drink with your friends and your child is at home and you don't know what's happening. You know, values are key to that, and I think we can all sit back and say the authorities and the government should be doing things, but I think it needs to start with us. As soon as we bring those values into our lives, we'll see the change that we want to see rather than waiting for someone else to put in a policy to fix it.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
Now, you know, we could have started this interview at Heshan De Silva, successful African entrepreneur, you know, soon, I don't, you know, might be competing with Ashish Thakkar on the Forbes list as one of the, you know, richest and most successful young Africans. We didn't start there simply because your story, I think, is part of the richness of who you are, and it elevates your success even more. But now let's come to the business side of things. Tell us about your company, VenCap.
Well, it's all about investing in young people's ideas. We finance the poorest people in Kenya. So, I mean, yes, we get a lot of people who say, I have this good idea and whatnot, but we want the people who are making $2 or less a day. And we have quite a few of those people here in Kenya, people who wouldn't have access to financing, who wouldn't have access to loans and things like that, but who have ideas, not the next big thing, but ideas that can uplift their communities. Social impact is key to everything that we do. You have to add value to people's lives. And if you're adding value to the poorest people's lives, you know, you're giving added services or things along those lines, then you're onto something special. And the key with any business, as always, is to target the masses. And the masses in Kenya are 60% people who aren't making a lot of money, but who are looking to spend something that enriches them.
How many businesses have you supported so far, and what's the capital base that you're working with?
You know, there are all sorts of numbers that are bandied around in the press about the number of businesses that we did. It was close to 17,000
wow,
that we've done up till today in the East African region, out of which we have a 70% success rate. So there are some that don't.
17,000 businesses?
Yeah, in the East African region.
Right.
But out of which 70% do succeed.
And these are what you would describe as micro
very small businesses. You know, I mean, something in an area, let's say that you want to open a kiosk, we try to make you think bigger. How can you make that kiosk something a little bit more? Offer more services. Maybe you incorporate a shoe shining thing in there, or a newspaper thing, or a little reading area where you can get your drink and sit down. Just a little, think bigger. Not on a big scale, but something a bit more than the traditional.
A little bit more value. A little bit more value. 70% success rate.
Yeah, which is very high for the field that we're in. We targeted 51% success rate when we were starting, and we just found that the desire for people to grow in Kenya is just so big. You know, we work very differently to normal government funds where you're given the cash, right? If you come to us and you pitch an idea, you don't actually see the money into your hands. We build that business, we teach you how to run it, and then when that business starts making money, you always own a larger percentage than we do.
So you become a partner.
Exactly.
That's what you are,
we are partners. We always take equity in the businesses that we start.
Wow. Now, let's just talk a little bit about, you know, a lot of people watching saying, look, I would love to access VenCap and see if I can get some support for my business.
Yeah.
What is it, you've talked about social impact being very important.
That's key.
What else is important when an entrepreneur sits in front of you? What do you want to see from them?
Passion. You know, that you truly care about the business that you're talking about. If I care about it more than you do, there's a disconnect. You know, and I'm not interested anymore. I need to see that you will work 15 hours, 16 hours a day in order to make that business work. If it's only going to be a side thing where you're going to put in 3 hours or 4 hours a day, sit back and say why it isn't growing. Well, I know why it isn't growing, because you're not willing to work at it, right? But you find that if you have a solid backer, you are willing to put in the hours to make it work, it is so hard to fail. But if you don't have that desire and that passion to grow and always see a bigger picture, no matter how small your start is, I think you always need to have a bigger vision in mind. If you want to sell corn on the side of the street, why aren't you looking at 15 places where different people are selling corn for you? Different things like that.
And that way you're employing other people.
Exactly.
And so, you know, let's talk a little bit about the fact that there are a lot of entrepreneurs who've heard now social impact is important. In fact, some of the fastest growing companies in the world are companies that have huge impact on communities. Passion is critical. You've got to have a bigger vision. So
always.
Start somewhere and know where you want to go. But for somebody who's sitting and watching and saying, okay, I may be starting here now, but I want to know how this guy, who a few years ago hit rock bottom, has achieved so much in the space of just 7 years.
Yeah.
So take us through your transformation from cleaning up to where you are today, Heshan.
Yeah, well, it started with looking for a job. and I don't have a university degree, so everyone knows in Nairobi how hard that is, right? I mean,
and you actually dropped out, was it your first year?
Yeah, just after my first year.
Okay.
Yeah, and a terrible transcript of horrible grades, so you can't show that to anyone. So all you can show is your high school grades, which, I mean, they weren't anything special either. So yeah, it's very hard to get a job when you only have that. So I tried to work in a kitchen in hotels, because I thought, you know what, if they give me that chance, I'll be able to prove myself and maybe I'll be able to progress. You know, my family didn't have anyone who they could just pick up the phone and call and say, just give him a job.
Give him a job, yeah.
That didn't exist. So I tried that, and that didn't work out. I worked in a very small tea exporting company for a bit as well. And that was a disaster, because, I mean, I'm a 21-year-old kid at this stage, and our competitors are 50, 60, and it's not, everyone is saying that he's too young to do this, or he's too young to do that, and I came across a lot of that sort of energy.
Cynicism, yeah.
Exactly, and young people have to deal with that, especially when you rise fairly fast. And so, yeah, it was one really good idea in insurance, which I had no clue about. I didn't know that the IRA, the Insurance Regulatory Authority, even existed. I didn't know that you had to get an underwriter on board, nothing like that. But it was an idea to incorporate insurance into bus tickets, long-distance bus tickets.
So you buy a bus ticket, and automatically you paid for your insurance as well.
In case you crash. And we worked with very large bus companies. And the insurers loved it. You know, we got a great partner on board, and the bus companies are like, hey, if we meet with an accident, we don't need to worry about all the passengers, because each one of them is covered. And so that's what we did. And what we did was we looked at our risk very carefully, and we picked bus companies that, touch wood, they do not crash. You know, I mean, these are big buses that don't crash. And that company, naturally, when you are insuring something that doesn't happen, naturally it did very well, and that was the start.
Who is we?
These are 3 kids. I was volunteering at a home in Athi River, and one of them had this idea about insurance, and it was their idea. It wasn't mine, but they shared it with me.
How old were they?
Older than me, so at that time 24 when I was 21.
Okay.
And they shared it with me, I guess because I was young, or maybe because I was brown-eyed, I don't know, maybe a combination of both.
Right.
But they trusted me with it, and they had no idea how to implement it. And I had no idea either, but what I did know is that if I bothered people enough,
they might pay attention.
Yeah.
They might pay attention. Yeah. How long did it take knocking on doors before somebody looked at you and said, I'm going to take this guy seriously?
Well, before they even met, it was 6 months. You know,
6 months of knocking on doors,
spamming email addresses, going to different receptionists and saying I have an idea, and being told we get 200 ideas a day. You know, I mean, all sorts of
So we're putting yours with a pile.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are just you're a little dot that is insignificant to us. That's basically the feeling that you get. And a lot of entrepreneurs today can also get that feeling from places that they go. But what I realized was, if you add value to companies that already exist, every hotel, wherever you are, or restaurant or small business, they want to make more money. If you can find a way that they can make more money, and you can plug that need with the company and scale that to other companies that are similar as well, you can grow.
So the lesson is prove your worth.
Exactly.
Come with a concept that adds value.
Exactly. And I'm not talking about, innovating around donkey hair weaves versus horse hair weaves. I get some ridiculous plans that are given to us. I'm not talking about that, right? I mean, like, actually change something. The way something is done, if you can show that this will add more revenue to a company, it's very rare for them to say, no, I don't want to make more money. But protect yourself as well.
So there's the 2 narratives of Africa. There's the Africa rising and the hopeless continent, and we're in between. I think, more heading towards the optimistic end of the scale, though, towards the Africa rising. And yet still so much hopelessness. So do you think Africa is the land of opportunity?
Absolutely. It's terrible to say something along these lines, but I think poverty creates so many opportunities. You look at the US, middle class, everyone has washing machines, everyone has flat screen TVs, and higher middle class is starting to get some of that stuff, right? We have so many people who are waiting to get to that level. And natural chain of progression shows that we will get to that point at some point. Now it's up to us to speed it up or let it follow that route, but we will get there. But that shows that we have all of these spaces where we can grow, where there's a burgeoning middle class, where there are people who are aspiring for more. And our banks are very conservative, so a lot of people aren't in debt or not in serious debt. In the US you get people who have mortgaged themselves to the hilt.
Right.
We don't have that yet, and that's very important when you're trying to grow. So when we have so many people who are looking to grow their lives, find a way that you can add value to them, and you'll find that's our opportunity for growth in this country. Really lift up the lower and middle class people over here with companies that add value to their lives, and you will succeed. It's very hard not to.
You deal with a lot of young entrepreneurs. We're always talking about the youth bulge in Africa. What's the greatest threat if we're not able to deal with issues of poverty, eradication, and inequality?
We've had a lot of things, the Arab Spring and stuff that have happened, and we have lots of people in this country who do hark towards those events also and say, this can happen if we don't address this and that. The truth is that revolutions like that are extremely painful to a country. You are crippling a whole country over something that can be fixed if given the right time and the right policies, and we really need to work towards that. I think people screaming towards revolution and things like that are horribly misguided, and I think they need to be told, you know what, deep breath, because we do not want to see what happened in Egypt, what happened in the Middle East happening over here. Not a chance. We're a country that's getting ready to grow. We need to lift up the poor people in our capacity. And that's not up to the government, that's not up to corporates, that's up to each of us. We all have people who are working in our homes, who have people back home who are struggling. What can we do within our capacity to lift people up, to give people hope? Instead of just handing money, let's say, okay, you know what, you have a bit of land back home, it costs 60,000 shillings to put up a small greenhouse or something. Okay, let's go in as partners in this, and then let's build that greenhouse. You own 50%, I own 50%, let's start over there. Or something, just start somewhere. Don't wait for others to do it. Do something.
Exactly. Donald Kaberuka said that on this show some time back. Just do something. Some people watching, and I've heard this mindset, so have you, saying, why should I? Why should I? Culturally, we do have a problem that in some communities, where some have less, those who have more are expected to take care of them. There's also the aspect of lack of understanding, perhaps, of what it takes to become successful, that it's a process. And some say, some of our younger populations are just not willing to take the time and effort. Because in this day and age with digital, you see all this success and you want it now. You don't want it tomorrow or the day after. So what would you say to the person who asks you, why should I, Heshan? The government is there, NGOs are there, all these other players exist. Why should I go the extra mile for Africa or for myself?
There's no free ticket in this life. Maybe you might be given some money one day by someone and it feels great at that point in time, but it doesn't keep happening. At some point in time you need to realize that your success is up to you. It's not blaming the government, it's not blaming anyone, NGOs or whoever you want to blame. It's not blaming that rich nephew that you have in town who's making XYZ and isn't giving money back to you. If anything, those people who are making money in the cities shouldn't be sending money back home, but they should be sending abilities for those people back home to grow. And agribusiness and things like that are key to our economy over here. We're so untapped in that field, and we're starting to try and grow in sectors like that, and it's relatively easy to do that. Farming is in many of our people's blood, right? Innovate around that, use proper irrigation methods, and if you have people back somewhere who are sending you money, get knowledge rather than cash. Teach yourself how to fish and you will fish.
Right. Yeah. Get knowledge rather than cash. In fact, knowledge is extremely powerful. Finally, Heshan, would you look into the camera and give Africa your message?
Yes, I think excuses are what many of our young people use to stay where they are. It becomes very comfortable to say, this happened in my life, and I'm not going to get anywhere because of that. I think we need to ditch a negative mindset. I don't care how bad things have been, it has been. And when you let the past come into your today and tomorrow, you're letting it win over you. But if you decide to change your mindset that, you know what, you're going to do something positive today, whether it's uplift someone else or build yourself up in some small way, and you live that day in, day out, you will find that success follows that mindset. But success very rarely follows a defeated mindset. And I think you need to think positive and then grow yourself in order to see success in your life.
Success rarely follows a defeated mindset. Stay positive. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
Hi, I'm Heshan De Silva. I'm a venture capitalist based in Kenya, and you're watching the African Leadership Dialogues.
A powerful story there of an individual's transformation and also discussions on the transformation of the African continent. We can do it. That's what Heshan is saying, but each of us have to take individual responsibility. Right now, we'd love to get your views as well. Let's have a look at what you have to say.
This week we asked you, what does it take to be a successful entrepreneur in Africa? Medrick Lee says, discipline, consistency, persistence and prudence in creative service provision. Shadi Mweke says, one must set objectives, have commitment, be ready to learn, accept the hard times before success comes to fruition. Lastly, prayer.
To build successful entrepreneurs, I think in this part of the world, the first thing that must be done is that we have to encourage people. People need to see that it is doable to get into, it is doable, that you can get into entrepreneurship and succeed. We need to point out more role models in this area. Then we need to avail funding. I think this has been a critical issue. We need to avail funding for our young people. We need to make it easy for them to access capital. We need to provide advisory services for them so that in case people have a need in one way or another, they need counsel in terms of financial management or things like that, then they know who to approach at either no rates at all or at very minimal prices.
To join our conversation, go to our G+ page, Africa Leadership Dialogues. On Facebook, Africa Leadership Dialogues. On Twitter, @AfricaLD. And on WhatsApp, send your video comments to +254 715 816 033.
Thank you for sharing your views. They're always appreciated. Time now for Africa's Top 10.
On Africa's Top 10 this week, we take a look at successful African entrepreneurs to follow on Twitter. Starting us off at number 10 is Strive Masiyiwa. Born in Zimbabwe, Strive Masiyiwa is the founder of Econet Wireless, a leading mobile telecommunication service provider in Africa. Masiyiwa ranked 32nd on the latest Forbes list of the 50 richest Africans, with a fortune estimated at $600 million. His tweets mainly focus on how to attain success in business and in life. He also tweets about the importance of ethics in business. His Twitter handle is at Strive Masiyiwa. Tony Elumelu comes in at number 9. Elumelu acquired a floundering Nigerian commercial bank and transformed it into UBA Group, a behemoth Pan-African financial services spanning 20 African countries. Among other things, Elumelu muses on Twitter about Africa's infrastructure challenges and his plans to fix them. He also shares news stories relating to African business, suggests books to read on investment and development, and once in a while delivers tips on how to succeed in business and in life. This Nigerian's Twitter handle is at Tony O. Elumelu. At number 8 is Ugandan Ashish Thakar. The 32-year-old entrepreneur is the founder of Mara Group, a Pan-African conglomerate with interest in internet, telecom and communications, property, manufacturing and finance. Thakar regularly tweets links to Africa-focused news articles on his Twitter handle at Ashish J. Thakar. Slotted in at number 7 is Vimal Shah. He is the CEO of Bidco Oil Refineries, the largest manufacturer of edible oils in the East African region. He shares with his father and brother a fortune that Forbes pegs at $1.6 billion. Shah tweets mostly inspirational quotes from successful philosophers, thinkers and business leaders. Catch him on Twitter at Vimal Africa. Kenyan entrepreneur, industrialist and business tycoon Chris Kirubi takes the number 6 spot. He is the founder of Tiger Hako Industries, Kenya's leading producer of fast-moving consumer goods and owner of Capital FM radio station. He also co-owns and is the largest controlling shareholder in the private equity firm Centum. He takes to Twitter to share important Kenyan news, success and life lessons with Kenya's young folk and muse about social political affairs in the country. His Twitter handle is at @CKirubi. Coming in at number 5 is Tanzanian Reginald Mengi. The Tanzanian industrialist and media tycoon is the founder of IPP Group, Tanzania's largest media conglomerate. He tweets mostly in Swahili, commenting on issues of socio-political relevance in Tanzania and condemning corruption, which apparently is on the rise in the East African country. Follow him on Twitter at Reg Mengi. Positioned at number 4 is Nigerian Kola Aluko. Aluko is a co-founder of Atlantic Energy, a Nigerian oil exploration company. He is also a co-founder of the Made in Africa Foundation, which raises funds for infrastructure investments in Africa. He shares news articles and opinion pieces relating to Africa infrastructure. His Twitter handle is @Kola Aluko. Taking the number 3 slot is another Tanzanian, Mohamed Deji. Deji is the CEO of Tanzania's METL, a leading conglomerate with interest in manufacturing and distribution. He takes on Twitter to tweet business success quotes, links to stories about African business and comments about Tanzania's economy and politics. Catch him on Twitter at @MoDeji. At number 2 is Njeri Rionge. She's one of Kenya's most successful businesswomen. She's a co-founder of Wananchi Group, an internet service provider which has gone to become East Africa's leading cable, broadband and IP internet-based phone company. She tweets a lot about Christian spirituality and management success. Follow her at Njeri Rionge. At number 1 this week is Heshan De Silva. The 25-year-old Kenyan venture capitalist is the founder of DSG VenCap, a firm that makes seed investments in the tech, media, agribusiness, consumer and hospitality industries. Heshan shares business success tips, inspiring messages and personal advice mostly geared towards Kenya's young folk. Follow him on Twitter at Heshan De Silva. And that's Africa's Top 10 this week.
Time to end the show. I've got to say goodbye, but as always, I've got a quote for you. It's actually this week an African proverb, and we take it from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And it goes, "Wisdom is like fire. People take it from others." And so my question to you tonight, did you take some wisdom from Heshan? Can you pass that wisdom on? Thank you for joining us. Blessings to you and blessings to Africa.